Hari Om, good evening. Welcome, one and all. So, to prepare for the upcoming sadhana, let us make all the preparations, adjusting the posture, finding a good, balanced way to sit, placing the hands on top of the knees in a mudra of your choice. Gently close the eyes. And with the eyes closed, become aware of the whole body mentally. Feel all the sensations from the contact between the base of the body and the floor to the most subtle sensations perceived by the skin. From top of the head down to the tips of the toes. Be aware of the sensations and let go of any tensions that you may find. Any tight areas can be released while maintaining the upright position of the body. Take 2 or 3 rounds of deep breath. As you inhale, feel fresh energy flooding into every cell of the body, and as you exhale, let the outgoing breath take with it everything that's heavy and all the tiredness, as well as any cares and worries. Then let the breath return back to its normal rhythm, but keep on observing it. The flow inside the throat and the nostrils, the movement of the abdomen and chest, connecting with the flow of the present moment and all the experiences that it brings. Awareness of the body and awareness of breath. With the next breath in, draw the awareness into the space between the eyebrows, making sure that this area is quite relaxed, the forehead, the eyebrows, the eyes, the whole face. Let the mind rest in Chidakash, the space of the mind, and be aware of what's happening in the center of this space between the eyebrows. Any sensations, pulsation, and begin to visualize here a tiny flame, brilliant and steady, steadier than even the ground beneath the body. See and feel the light from this flame pervading the whole body, the whole Chidakash. And with the awareness concentrated on this point, on this flame, we will now chant the mantra Om 3 times altogether, followed by the Shanti mantras also altogether. For Om chanting, take a deep breath in. Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai Shanti 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 Hari Om. Be aware of the vibrations of the mantras within the body and in the environment around you. Externalizing the mind gradually. Prepare to move and bring the palms together in front of the body. Rub them till you feel heat. Then cup the eyes gently. Let that heat relax any last tension in the eyes and the eyelids. And then remove the hands, open the eyes. Hari Om Tat Sat. And our group has grown a little since the beginning, so welcome to you all once again. We will begin today with Sadguru Vandana instead of the Gayatri, just so that we start on a nice melodic note. And I will share the text on the screen. At first we'll start with Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram, and then with the same melody from the first verse we'll sing all together. Shri Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Ram 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 Bhava Sagar Tar नंदन बंधन खंडन हे शरणागत किंकर भीत मने गुरुदेव दया कर दीन जने गुरुदेव दया कर दीन जने हृदय कंदर तामस भास्कर हे तुम विष्णु प्रजापति शंकर हे पर ब्रह्म परात् पर वेद भाने गुरुदेव दया कर दीन जने गुरुदेव दया कर दीन जने मनवारण कारण अंकुश हे नर त्राण करे हरि चक्षुष हे गुणगान परायण देवगणे गुरुदेव दया कर दीन जने गुरुदेव दया कर दीन जने कुल कुंडलिनी तुम भंजक हे हृदय ग्रंथि विदारण कारण हे महिमा तव गोचर शुद्ध मने गुरुदेव दया कर दीन जने गुरुदेव दया कर दीन जने अभिमान प्रभाव विमर्दक हे अति दीन जाने तुम रक्षक हे मन कंपित वंचित भक्ति धाने गुरुदेव दया कर दीन जने गुरुदेव दया कर दीन जने रिपुसूदन मंगल नायक हे सुख शांति वाराभयदायक हे त्रयताप हरे तव नाम गुणे गुरुदेव दया कर दीन जने गुरुदेव दया कर दीन जने तव नाम सदा सुख साधक हे पतिता धम मानव पावक हे मम मानस चंचल रात्रि दिने गुरुदेव दया कर दीन जने गुरुदेव दया कर दीन जने जय सद्गुरु ईश्वर प्रापक हे भव रोग विकार विनाशक हे जय सद्गुरु ईश्वर प्रापक हे भव रोग विकार विनाशक हे मन लीन रहे तब श्री चरणे गुरुदेव दया कर दीन जने गुरुदेव दया कर दीन जने गुरुदेव दया कर Shanti 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 Hari Om. Now we shall continue with the chanting of Rama Gayatri 27 times. First round, please listen, and then 27 times altogether. Mantras in general are means for us to connect with the deeper aspect of our own being. Different mantras have different purposes, different effects. And with Rama, the predominant factor here is the connection with the understanding, the living understanding of Dharma, not as a theory, not as something to be understood through the intellect, but as the ability to know at any given moment what is the right thing to do, the right way to behave, to think, to act. And the sankalpa, the resolve that we take before chanting a mantra, is like opening the door after inviting the guest. Without this sankalpa, it is like inviting someone but keeping the door closed. Something might still seep in through the gaps, but it's much better if we open the door and let it all in to do its work within our deeper being. Om Dasharathatmajaya vidmahe Sita Vallabhaya dhimahi Tanno Ramah prachodayat. Om Dasharathatmajaya vidmahe Sita Vallabhaya dhimahi Tanno Ramah prachodayat. Om Dasharathatmajaya vidmahe Sita Vallabhaya dhimahi Tanno Ramah prachodayat. Om Dasharathatmajaya vidmahe Sita Vallabhaya dhimahi Tanno Ramah prachodayat. Om Dasharathatmajaya vidmahe Sita Vallabhaya dhimahi Tanno Ramah prachodayat. Om Dasharathatmajaya vidmahe Sita Vallabhaya dhimahi Tanno Ramah prachodayat. Om Dasharathatmajaya vidmahe Sita Vallabhaya dhimahi Tanno Ramah prachodayat. Om Dasharathatmajaya vidmahe Sita Vallabhaya dhimahi Tanno Ramah prachodayat. Om Dasharathatmajaya vidmahe Sita Vallabhaya dhimahi Tanno Ramah prachodayat. Om Dasharathatmajaya vidmahe Sita Vallabhaya dhimahi Tanno Ramah prachodayat. Om Dasharathatmajaya vidmahe Sita Vallabhaya dhimahi Tanno Ramah prachodayat. Om Dasharathatmajaya vidmahe Sita Vallabhaya dhimahi Tanno Ramah prachodayat. ॐ दशरथात्मजाय विद्महे सीतावल्लभाय धीमहि तन्नो रामः प्रचोदयात्। 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 ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः keeping the eyes closed for a short time. Observe the body, the breath, the emotions, the energy, along with the vibrations of the sound that you have just produced and heard. Externalizing the awareness. Gradually prepare to open your eyes whenever you feel ready to do so. Hari Om Tat Sat. Today, I would like to start the topic on Dharma from a kind of very fundamental place. Where does it even come from? What is the origin of these various teachings, or not just the teachings, but the whole concept of it? And the best place to start is our own origin, which is nature. Because nature is such a complex self-regulating system in which each component fulfills its purpose. And we can think of this purpose as the dharma of that particular element. It is the dharma of a river to flow, it is a dharma of a tree to grow and bear fruits, and so on and so forth. And we can see this from the point of view of duty. So we could think that it is the duty of the various elements of nature to fulfill their different purposes. When it comes to humans who have the ability to distance ourselves from nature, from the connection with it, but also the ability to be connected with it, then we see why it is important for those of us who live in civilization, which is the vast majority of people, to learn about and to understand and to try and live the principles of Dharma, which is not necessarily essential for those people who still live in connection with nature. It is hard to imagine that a band of bushmen in the desert of Kalahari need to give long lectures on Dharma in order to understand how to live in connection with nature. They simply live it because they are part of that whole self-regulating system. And we see that these people who are called primitive and so on are actually extremely evolved as human beings, in the sense that the friendliness which is at the core of the human nature is the defining feature. And within these small societies where everyone knows everyone, a system naturally develops, not of hierarchies, not of top-down management, but simply fulfilling different roles in this bigger organism of that community. There's a beautiful image that I once saw in a TED talk given by this photographer who went to a village in Africa, somewhere in southern Africa, to photograph a whole village of these beautiful people by sitting them on a tree. And when he tried to position them in a way that he thought was best for the photograph, there was always some conflict, some moving. He could never get a still picture. And then he just allowed them to arrange themselves in the way that feels natural to them. And the most beautiful picture of these people sitting in a tree, all smiling, all happy, came out as a result. It's just a little illustration that when we allow nature to run its course, to do its thing, then we don't need to always think what is the right thing to do, what is the wrong thing to do. It simply happens naturally. It flows from within. And because we don't have this ability on account of living in very artificial environments, we need to make an effort, a concerted, concentrated and consistent effort to keep on connecting with that inner reality and allow it to guide us, rather than always using the intellect and the various habits that we learn from these kind of unnatural ways of civilized life, as we know, especially in today's day and age, are very, very detrimental to mental health if we just let that run its course and allow that to influence us on every level. And so this is where the hard part of learning to live in a dharmic way comes in. Hard in the sense that it is against the kind of tendencies that we see today of this very strong individualism and everyone living, quote unquote, my truth. Even though there is a value in the word my truth, in the sense that we all have our own swabhava, our own nature, but the term is used rather to describe a set of various superficial identities and labels that don't really have much in common with the inner self, with the reality within. And so there is a need to adopt a certain external system that we accept as being superior to our own whims and fancies. And anyone who has done any kind of meditation or an effort to improve our life in some way or other will know that on a clear day, on a good day when the body and mind are in harmony, we understand the need for adopting the various principles in our lives. And it's easy. On other days, maybe when the energy is low or there's been some stress in the environment and so on, there may be a lot of resistance. And so we have this kind of inconsistency that needs to be checked in some way or other. And so we need to adopt a system. Again, what that should be, no one can tell you or me or anybody, because then there is a natural tendency in all of us really to reject this kind of authority from the outside. At least in those of us who are kind of free thinkers and free feelers. Maybe that's not the case for everybody. But one great statement that I have mentioned also before, and which I really like, is in the Yoga Vasishta, a text quite associated with the life of Rama. He's a teenager full of depression that he got from simply observing how the world operates. And, this sentiment is there that what is the point of trying to improve oneself when everything is destined for destruction and death and so on, like many of us probably have experienced in our own adolescence. But with Rama, of course, it is happening because he's a very high level of spiritual evolution. And so Sage Vasishta comes to give answers to all these things. And it's a very beautiful text to read because it describes how one has to both fulfill one's role in life, depending on the circumstances of one's birth and upbringing and education and everything else on the material plane. And at the same time, knowing that all of that externality is really not the reality, and the effort should be always made in parallel with fulfilling our duties to the best of our ability, and thereby not creating conflicts and attachments, but maintaining one's inner composure at all times. In that way, we should always, in parallel, be involved in the deeper work, the meditation, the reflection, the remembrance of the one being which transcends matter, which transcends the senses, which transcends the mind, the ego, the personality, and which is the final destination for the human soul. And in that scripture, in the very beginning, Vasishta, or rather the commentator, says, "This scripture alone can lead you to the highest goal. But if you do not believe in the validity of this scripture, perhaps for the reason that it was written by people and not some kind of divine being, then don't accept this scripture, but look, and whatever speaks to you, whatever attracts you, whatever you do accept as an authority, accept it and then follow the teachings of it." So this is one great way of looking at how to adopt a system of Dharma as something that should be connected with our own inclinations. It should really speak to us. But then we need to accept its authority over our own minds, over our own learned behaviors. And then we can model ourselves to be more and more closely aligned with whatever system that we have chosen or which has chosen us. So often it feels that way for many of us. So this is the one thing that is often overlooked in a society where everyone is kind of told, to find your own way, to find your own path. And thereby we have to kind of reinvent the wheel more often than not. And it's really good to understand that there is a universal thread across all traditions, across all cultures. And that universality tells us something, that there is a shared reality which we can connect with, which we can experience, which we can live, which is beyond the superficial divisions of, we know how many divisions we create against each other and so on. So this is one reason why such a system needs to be adopted, so that when we go through the ups and downs of life, as we know from the Gita, the gunas, the three qualities of nature, the luminosity, the darkness, and the activity, all combined, they all fluctuate both within our own personality and in the environment also around us. And so we need to find some kind of thread to hold on to in order for us to gradually disassociate ourselves from these different fluctuations, experience them, go through the various responses, reactions that we have, but inwardly always understand that this is just a passing phase. And then we can get touch with that unchanging aspect of our being more and more. And then life becomes much easier to go through no matter what the external circumstances bring us. And there's also another reason. Both yoga, philosophy, and modern science tell us that the senses are extremely unreliable, and therefore also the mind, which is informed or fed information through these senses. For example, when we look at the scenery, or even when you look around the room right now, there is the illusion that we see and perceive a continuous kind of perception, a continuous kind of reality. It is an illusion because neuroscience tells us that in reality, all that the brain can see, all that the eyes can see, is little parts, snapshots, which are taken in very, very, very short times, hundreds of milliseconds. And then the brain fills the gaps in between those screenshots, and we perceive things as a fluid reality. And so this is also why different people can see the same thing, but in completely different ways. And because of all these reasons, it's going to be much better for us if we adopt some kind of path that we know can lead us to the goal. And we know it from, there has to be an element of faith, obviously, because we don't know what the final goal is going to be like. But we get more and more faith also from following that path and getting little hints, little glimpses of higher experiences, which then reinforce this virtuous process of alignment with that universal Dharma, with those universal principles and realities. And there are many people who don't gravitate to any spiritual path. For them, there is, for example, this humanistic approach, which simply is universal values, but without any of the sort of higher transcendental elements. And that's fine for people who are so conditioned that they would always reject any kind of spiritual terminology or ideation. Then there is also a path like that. So the most important thing is that we understand the value of what we know as yamas and niyamas, not as limitations, not as rules that are given to us from some kind of external source, but behaviors which, if we cultivate them, they can help us grow. Just like when a child is growing, it is boundaries that we put in the right places that allow the child to grow, rather than a child that is allowed to do whatever he or she wants, and then the growth is stunted. The growth doesn't really happen. So these boundaries we place for ourselves into our own lives, and certain discipline, certain regularity. And then we very quickly realize that it benefits us hugely when we adopt, let's say, a regular routine in the morning, in the evening, during the day. And then when we go deeper, we adopt certain rules of thinking when we are able to observe the mind and there is something that is troubling us. Swami Shivananda says that it should be as easy to remove an obnoxious thought as it is to remove a stone from a shoe which is bothering us. And as long as we are not able to do that, we shouldn't even think about any kind of higher realizations or abilities, because they will only unfold once we are able to really stay solid within our own center. And thereby we also understand others much better, because we know that that changeless reality within us is the same as that within all other people. And when we connect with that in other people, we also allow them to bring out their best. So we can be a very positive influence on other people, not through teaching, not through preaching, but simply through experiencing and allowing to experience. So I think the gist of all this is that, like Krishna says so many times in the Bhagavad Gita, one should always understand one's duty. Like I said in the beginning, in these natural communities, these duties are developed based on the individual talents and abilities and nature of each individual. They are not necessarily given, but in a larger society, generally, these duties are kind of fixed. And when we think of the theory, and I couldn't emphasize this enough, the theory of the caste system, for example, in India, which of course in its reality is rather repressive and not very conducive to individual development. But the idea behind it, that different people who have different abilities are then guided into doing exactly what they're best at, and in that way they fulfill their role in this larger group, in this larger society. That is something that again happens on a natural level in a small group, and in a larger group it is kind of formalized. But even today, there are still people, even today, who understand not just the privilege that comes with their particular caste, but also the duties that they have. Because let's say the kshatriyas, the warriors, they also have a duty of protection, of supporting the lower castes and listening to the Brahmins and so on. So I'm not saying again that this is a good system or something to follow, but when we understand Dharma in a larger way, in a larger kind of field, larger than the individualistic kind of approach that we have in the West, which has led us to so much fragmentation, then we can see the value of something like that for the stability of a society. So just a little food for thought there. And in our own personal striving, in our own personal life, the idea of duty is something that is very important, because when we think of the things that we do as duties based on where we are, who we are influencing, who we are around, then the element of ego gets less and less and less, and we become more and more in tune with that ineffable thing that we call truth or reality, which can never be experienced in totality, but which can be experienced in larger and larger measure when we see the life as a duty rather than as something that is subject to the whims of the mind and the ego. And so, as we chant the next mantra, before we do so, let us reflect each in our own way on the duties that we have as members of family or work community or friends, sons, daughters, parents, whatever it may be. And these duties, they extend in all dimensions. We have been given a body, and it is our duty to take good care of it. The mind needs to be taken care of. Any kind of negativity can be seen as a kind of disease. And so we need to heal the mind, not through suppressing that negativity, but by always refocusing on the positive, happy essence that underlies all the negative feelings. How do we need to behave with other people so that there is more harmony and cohesion as opposed to conflict and division? How we can best support? How can I help? How can I be a friend? And then this is a duty. This is not something that we just do once in a while. Why is it important that we become that more and more and correct any failures which are seen as stepping stones towards success, rather than identifying with them and allowing them to take us down to a darker place? And how we need connection with others so that they can show us who we really are, because our own mind will never do that. The ego is a wall of mirrors. We can keep the eyes closed as we chant the mantra Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram 108 times. If you have a mala handy, you can take it. Otherwise, don't externalize or run around to find it. Simply follow along. I'll chant it once from here. Join me whenever you are ready. Shri Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Ram 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 Jaya Jaya Ram Shri Ram 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 Ram Jaya Jaya Ram Shri Ram Jaya 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 Ram Jaya Jaya Ram Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Ram Shri 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 Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Ram Om Shanti Shanti We shall now continue, when you're ready to open your eyes, with Rama's solar-powered weapon against the ego and all of its manifestations. The weapon with which he was able to defeat Ravana, the demon that started the whole saga of Ramayana. Maybe it needs to be said here that all this kind of wartime terminology and these images might be a bit triggering in the current day and age, but it should be remembered, just as in Krishna's case, but in the Bhagavad Gita, which was again taking place in the middle of a great war. War, when we look at it from the dharmic perspective, as shown by these great avatars, is the absolutely last resort after every other option to establish Dharma have been exhausted. And this tells us one thing on the personal level, not that we need to think along these military terms, but being good, being a force for good in the world doesn't always, unfortunately, only happen through turning the other cheek and trying to diffuse conflicts, because sometimes the forces of evil are too persistent, and sometimes action needs to be taken. One great example of that is the Sikh approach. You know, the Sikh tradition. Their entire focus is on protecting Dharma, protecting goodness. And one of the things that is part of their traditional uniform is a little dagger that they carry on their leg. Because if need be, if someone is being hurt or some great injustice is being done, then sometimes even such action needs to be taken. But of course, in our own life, we should always strive to find every other option before any such action is taken. With that said, Aditya Hridayam. Today we'll chant it with the more traditional rhythm, and so we'll sing the first verse only, call and response, and then we'll go slowly through the remaining verses altogether. Rama Rama Mahabaho Shrenu Guhyam Sanatanam. Rama Rama Mahabaho Shrenu Guhyam Sanatanam. Yena Sarva Narin Vatsa Samare Vijayishyase. Yena Sarva Narin Vatsa Samare Vijayishyase. Aditya Hridayam Punyam Sarvashatru Vinashanam. Jayavahan Japan Nityam Akshayam Paramam Shivam. Sarvamangala Mangalyam Sarvapapa Pranashanam. Chinta Shuka Prashamanam Ayurvardhanam Uttamam. Rashmimantam Samudyantam Deva Suranamaskritam. Pujayasva Vivasvantam Bhaskaram Bhuvaneshwaram. Sarvadevatmako Hyesha Tejasvi Rashmi Bhavanaha. Esha Deva Suraganan Lokan Patigabhastibhihi. Esha Brahma cha Vishnuscha Shivah Skandah Prajapatihi. Mahendro Dhanadah Kalo Yamah Somo Hyapampatihi. पितरो वसवः साध्या अश्विनौ मरुतो मनुः वायुर्वह्निः प्रजा प्राण ऋतुकर्ता प्रभाकरः आदित्यः सविता सूर्यः खगः पूषा गभस्तिमान् सुवर्णसदृशो भानुर्हिरण्यरेता दिवाकरः हरिदश्वः सहस्रार्चिः सप्तसप्तिर्मरीचिमान् तिमिरोन्मथमः शम्भुस्त्वष्टा मार्तण्ड अंशुमान् हिरण्यगर्भः शिशिरस्तपनो भास्करो रविः अग्निगर्भोदितेः पुत्रः शङ्खः शिशिरनाशनः व्योमनाथस्तमो भेदी ऋग्यजुस्सामपारगः घनवृष्टिरपां मित्रो विन्ध्यवीथीप्लवङ्गमः आतपी मण्डली मृत्युः पिङ्गलः सर्वतापनः कविर्विश्वो महातेजा रक्तः सर्वभवोद्भवः नक्षत्रग्रहताराणाम् अधिपो विश्वभावनः तेजसामपि तेजस्वी द्वादशात्मन्नमोऽस्तु ते नमः पूर्वाय गिरये पश्चिमायाद्रये नमः ज्योतिर्गणानां पतये दिनाधिपतये नमः जयाय जयभद्राय हर्यश्वाय नमो नमः नमो नमः सहस्रांशो आदित्याय नमो नमः नम उग्राय वीराय सारंगाय नमो नमः नमः पद्मप्रबोधाय मार्तण्डाय नमो नमः ब्रह्मेशानाच्युतेशाय सूर्यायादित्यवर्चसे भास्वते सर्वभक्षाय रौद्राय वपुषे नमः तमोघ्नाय हिमघ्नाय शत्रुघ्नायामितात्मने कृतघ्नघ्नाय देवाय ज्योतिषां पतये नमः तप्तचामीकराभाय वह्नये विश्वकर्मणे नमस्तमोभिनिघ्नाय रुचये लोकसाक्षिणे नाशयत्येष वैभूतं तदेव सृजति प्रभुः पायत्येष तपत्येष वर्षत्येष गभस्तिभिः एष सुप्तेषु जागर्ति भूतेषु परिनिष्ठितः एष एवाग्निहोत्रं च फलं चैवाग्निहोत्रिणाम् देवाश्च क्रतवश्चैव क्रतूनां फलमेव च यानि कृत्यानि लोकेषु सर्व एष रविः प्रभुः एनमापत्सु कृच्छ्रेषु कान्तारेषु भयेषु च कीर्तयन् पुरुषः कश्चिन्नावसीदति राघव पूजयस्वैनमेकाग्रो देवदेवं जगत्पतिम् एतत् त्रिगुणितं जप्त्वा युद्धेषु विजयिष्यसि एतत् त्रिगुणितं जप्त्वा युद्धेषु विजयिष्यसि एतत् त्रिगुणितं जप्त्वा युद्धेषु विजयिष्यसि ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ओम्। And as we began on a melodic note, so we shall end on one. If you came for the Hanuman Chalisa program, you would have heard this. A very beautiful bhajan called Parama Mantra Rama Nama. In short, the name of Ram is the highest mantra, is the name of this bhajan. And it talks about how the repetition of the name Ram, and obviously with feeling, with devotion, with the right sankalpa, is a means to overcome all sins, is a means to develop peace, and how Rama is the best friend to the righteous person. And no one embodies this more than this one figure called Ratnakar, who was a very violent robber, killed many people in forests and so on. And then he met a sage, I can't remember which master came to him, and gave him the name Rama to repeat in order to change his nature. And he was so wicked that he couldn't even do that. So instead, the sage told him, well, why don't you just repeat the word Mara, which means kill? And so he just said, Mara, 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 Mara. And that became Rama. And so accidentally, his nature completely changed. And today we know him as, not as Ratnakar, but as Valmiki. And is none other than the author of Ramayana. So if such a terrible person can get transformation with the name of Rama, then surely we can also stand a chance. So here we have it. The first verse is the kind of chorus that will be repeated after each of the verses. Prema mudita manase kaho Rama Rama Ram, kaho Rama Rama Ram. Prema mudita manase kaho Rama Rama Ram, kaho Rama Rama Ram. And we'll do this one once again. Every verse is call and response, by the way. Prema mudita manase kaho Rama Rama Ram, kaho Rama Rama Ram. Prema mudita manase kaho Rama Rama Ram, kaho Rama Rama Ram. Papa kate dukha mite leke Rama Nam. Papa kate dukha mite leke Rama Nam. Bhava samudra sukhadanava eka Rama Nam. Bhava samudra sukhadanava eka Rama Nam. Kaho Rama Rama Ram, kaho Rama Rama Ram, kaho Rama Rama Ram, kaho Rama Rama Ram. Prema mudita manase kaho Rama Rama Ram, kaho Rama Rama Ram. Prema mudita manase kaho Rama Rama Ram, kaho Rama Rama Ram. Parama Shanti Sukha Nidhana Eka Rama Nam. Parama Shanti Sukha Nidhana Eka Rama Nam. Niradhara Ko Adhara Eka Rama Nam. निराधार को आधार एक राम नाम। कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम। प्रेम मुदित मन से कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम। प्रेम मुदित मन से कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम। परम गुप्त परम इष्ट मंत्र राम नाम। परम गुप्त परम इष्ट मंत्र राम नाम। संत हृदय सदा बसत एक राम नाम। संत हृदय सदा बसत एक राम नाम। कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम नाम। प्रेम मुदित मन से कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम। प्रेम मुदित मन से कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम। महादेव सतत जपत दिव्य राम नाम। महादेव सतत जपत दिव्य राम नाम। काशी मरत मुक्त करत कहत राम नाम। काशी मरत मुक्त करत कहत राम नाम। कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम। प्रेम मुदित मन से कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम। प्रेम मुदित मन से कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम। माता पिता बंधु सखा सब ही राम नाम। माता पिता बंधु सखा सब ही राम नाम। भक्त जनन जीवन धन एक राम नाम। भक्त जनन जीवन धन एक राम नाम। कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम। प्रेम मुदित मन से कहो राम राम राम, कहो राम राम राम। प्रेम मुदित मन से कहो राम राम राम, 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 कहो राम राम राम। ओम शांति शांति शांति। हरि sitting with the eyes closed, body still, letting go of any and all mental effort. Be aware of the vibrations of the mantras. Reflecting perhaps on the value and presence of Dharma in our own lives. The importance of finding this truth, which is bereft of intellectual concepts, dogmas, any authorities, but which is very much an expression of our own innermost nature. how we can improve our connection with that in a world that often takes us in rather opposite directions. One of the immortal quotes of Swami Satyananda is, "Real life is within." This doesn't negate the reality of the world of senses, the world of matter, but it indicates that truth and reality is somewhere else, somewhere deeper than that. And the easiest way to come closer and closer to it is to live life in the spirit of duty, with the attitude of being the instrument of a higher will, however we may think of it or conceptualize it. The important thing is the experience of it. How we can best adopt this in our own lives, given our circumstances and conditioning and knowledge of all the various techniques and approaches that can help us, if we care to use them. Gradually withdrawing the awareness from the body, the breath, and any thinking process into the space between the eyebrows. Fixing the inner gaze on the symbol of bright, luminous flame. Prepare to chant the mantra Om 3 times and Shantipat with feeling and intention. Take a deep breath in. Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma mritangamaya sarvesham swastirbhavatu sarvesham shantirbhavatu sarvesham purnam bhavatu sarvesham mangalam bhavatu lokah samastah sukhino bhavantu om trayambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushtivardhanam उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनात् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरि Hari Om Tat Sat. Opening your eyes when you feel ready to do so, palming them if need be. Thank you all for joining. I hope you enjoyed this session and that all of our understanding of Dharma has increased somewhat. And I look forward to seeing you again next time. Hari Om. Good night. All the best.